Right now, someone is staring at a number on a screen and feeling their stomach negotiate with it. The number is not bread. It is not a roof, a bus ride, a warm room, or the tiny luxury of ignoring the bill for one more day. And yet, somehow, it can decide all of those things. A few digits go up, and life feels softer. A few digits go down, and suddenly the fridge, the rent, and the front door become very interested. This is the strange part. Money is imaginary in texture, but aggressively real in consequences. So the real question is not why a screen matters. It is why everyone obeys the number behind it. To understand why everyone obeys the number, remove the screen. No app, no rent portal, no tiny rectangle ruining your breakfast. For much of human life, trust did not need to travel very far. It lived in people who already knew each other. In a small group, someone remembered who shared food, who helped, and who vanished when work appeared. Very professional behavior from the department of being seen. Value was not always a thing you carried in your hand. Sometimes it was a favor, a promise, a debt, or a reputation breathing down your neck. Not a clean little barter table where one fish politely becomes three berries. That story is too tidy. Humans are rarely that kind to diagrams. The important part was social memory. People knew who owed, who cheated, who could be trusted, and who needed watching. And for a while, that was enough. No coins, no paper, no glowing balance, just memory doing the job. But the problem was not finished. Memory works best when the whole system still fits inside human attention. At first, that sounds like the answer. People remembered who owed what. It is not. Because memory is powerful, but it is not a spreadsheet. For a small group, reputation can carry a lot of weight. Everyone knows who helped, who dodged work, who suddenly became very busy near harvest. Basically social accounting, with worse handwriting and more eye contact. But once the group gets larger, the system starts to wobble. Now there are stores of grain, workers, tools, taxes, public buildings, distant people. Not one neighbor owing another neighbor a basket of something. A whole web of claims moving through people who may not even know each other. Who worked, who paid, who still owes, who is allowed to take from the storehouse. At some point, the human head becomes the worst office in the building. Not because people got stupid, because the obligation no longer fit inside memory. So trust moved into the least dramatic place imaginable, a record. A mark on clay could do what a nervous brain could not. It could sit there and remember who owed grain, who had worked, who had promised silver, and, very importantly, how much. Because vague debt is how friendships become weather systems. The term sounds technical. The idea is simple. Accounting is memory with a surface. Marks, tokens, tablets, weights, grain records, silver measures. Not money as a shiny object yet. More like a public note saying, this person owes this much to that person in this unit. Basically, obligation had been domesticated into paperwork. Now that sounds like the answer. Stop trusting memory and trust something useful. Barley can feed people. Cattle can move, breed, and generally refuse to fit inside a pocket. Salt can preserve food. Shells can be rare enough that people agree to notice them. Silver can be weighed, stored, and compared. So yes, useful or scarce objects can start acting like value. Basically, money briefly becomes a storage problem with better branding. But physical value brings physical nonsense. Grain spoils, cattle vary, salt crumbles, shells depend on recognition, and silver needs measuring. Even worse, not every useful thing divides politely. Half a cow is not a clean payment plan. And if value has to travel, heavy goods become a very old logistics complaint. The object may be valuable, but value still needs to become portable, standard, and trusted by strangers. Useful objects still needed a public costume. This is where coins start to matter. Not because metal suddenly became magic. Metal was already useful, scarce, durable, and annoying enough to feel serious. The new part was the stamp. A coin was metal with an official little message pressed into it. Basically, a tiny public certificate pretending to be an object. It said, this weighs what it is supposed to weigh. It said, this metal is what people claim it is. And just as important, it said, someone important expects others to accept it. That is a very different thing from holding a random lump of silver. The lump asks, "Do you trust this material?" The coin asks, "Do you trust the system behind this mark?" And once strangers can answer yes, value starts moving much farther. Across markets, taxes, armies, debts, and all the usual human paperwork furniture. Once money becomes a claim, paper stops looking like a downgrade. It looks like the trick admitting what it was doing. A coin still lets the brain relax a little. There's metal. There's weight. There's the ancient comfort of something you can drop on a table. Paper removes most of that comfort. It is thin, bendable, easy to tear, and not especially useful unless your hobby is emergency bookmarks. And yet, somehow, this weak little object can move food, labor, shelter, and status. Not because the paper is valuable. Because the paper says someone, somewhere recognizes this claim. The note is basically a portable receipt with better social manners. A promise you can hand to a stranger without explaining your entire life story. That is the important part. Paper money makes the physical object shrink, while the system behind it gets heavier. And once the system is doing the real work, even the paper starts to look optional. For a while, paper still gave the hand something to hold. Then money learned an even cleaner trick. It became a line in somebody else's book. Not a treasure chest. Not a heroic vault glowing under a bank like a dragon hobby. The important thing was the ledger. Who was credited? Who was debited? Who could claim what? A deposit was not only an object entering a building. It was a trusted institution saying, yes, this person now has a claim. A transfer was not money sprinting through pipes somewhere. It was one record going down, another record going up. Very elegant in the way only paperwork can be terrifying, and debt fit inside the same machinery. One person, one institution, one line, saying something is owed. The physical thing had not disappeared completely, but it was no longer the center of the story. Money was becoming less like a thing you held, and more like a position you occupied inside a trusted system. And that brings us back to the screen. A number in an account, a card near a reader, a bill waiting politely, like a tiny fret. There is almost nothing physical left. No grain, no silver, no paper promise folded in a pocket. Just a balance, a password, and several institutions agreeing not to blink. But that number is not floating alone. Your employer recognizes it when wages arrive. Your landlord recognizes it when rent leaves. A store recognizes it when food becomes something you are allowed to carry away. The tax system recognizes it. Debts recognize it. Bills recognize it with impressive emotional timing. Basically, the number has a social life. It sits inside a web of records, rules, claims, and expectations. That is why digital money is physically thin but socially heavy. The screen does not feed you. The screen does not shelter you. But the system behind the screen decides who will treat you as paid, owed, trusted, or late. The old chain is still there: memory, record, metal, paper, ledger, balance. Money is social trust, made countable. So, after all that, the number on the screen is not real in the way bread is real. You cannot eat it, sleep under it, or unlock a door with its pixels. Which is inconvenient because landlords are famously not impressed by philosophy. But the hunger is real. The rent is real. The bill is real. The debt, the work, the locked door, the paid receipt, all of that is real. Money feels solid because the world around it treats the symbol as a claim, not a magic object, not a tiny god living inside your banking app. Basically, portable trust with consequences attached. The screen is just the newest surface for an old human solution. Memory became records, records became coins, coins became paper, paper became ledgers. And now the ledger glows in your hand. That is why the number feels real. Not because the symbol is powerful by itself, but because everyone knows what happens when it changes.